Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I am Agni Oktaviani Saputri. My student ID is 120060016. I'm from Class A PBAA. I will present the result of the final exam for the Introduction to Literature course. I will convey several points, namely about poetry, prose, and drama. Let's start right away. The first point is poetry. I'm going to read a poem called Hope by Emily Dickinson. Hope. Hope is a subtle glutton. He feeds upon the fair, and yet, inspected closely, what abstain is there? He's in the helicon table, that never sit but one, and whatsoever is consumed, the same amounts remain. Next, short biography of Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson was born at the family home in Amherst, Massachusetts on December 10, 1830, into a prominent but not wealthy family. His father, Edward Dickinson, was an attorney at Amherst and trustee of Amherst College. Dickinson spent 7 years at the academy, taking classes in English and classical literature, Latin botany, geology history, mental philosophy, and arithmetic. When he was 18, the Dickinson befriended a young lawyer named Benjamin Franklin Newton. In direct contrast to the tremendous productivity he displayed in the early 1860, Dickinson wrote vivid poem in 1886, based with personal loss as well as loss of household help. Dickinson was probably too overwhelmed to maintain his previous level of writing. Although he continued to write in his later years, Dickinson stopped editing and organizing his poetry. He also demanded a promise from his sister Lavinia to burn his paper. Emily Dickinson died on May 50, 1886 due to the brain disease and lasted 2.5 years. Now, analysis of her poem. This poem used an ABC rhyme. Let it be known, as I was taught, that rhyme is determined by sound, not by the physical of a word. In the iambic system, it uses iambic pentameter. What is iambic pentameter? Well, I just so happens I forgot. This poem used a metaphor to explain its message. Hope is like to a bird. Perhaps that the tendency of poetry in those days was to use nature as a metaphor for its meaning. Take a look at Robert Frost's poem here. In Bird Minor, Robert also writes in subject of birds. It is also possible that the water life influenced the selection of this theme. Emily rarely left home, and she saw anyone. Few people come to his house, even so she still corresponded in order to maintain her social relationship. Looks like a Cartini, thought Emily herself in 1830. Second point is prose. I will review the novel Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, but before I will convey a brief biography of Charles Dickens first. Dickens was born on February 7, 1812 in Portsmouth on the southern coast of England. His father, John Dickens, was a naval clerk who dreamed of becoming rich, and his mother, Elizabeth Barrow, aspired to be a teacher and school director. But the family financial situation had grown worse because John Dickens used to spend money dangerously beyond the family means. Consequently, Jones was sent to prison for debt in 1824 when Charles was just 12 years old. After his mother's imprisonment, Charles Dickens left school to work in a factory. Despite his lack of formal education, he edited a weekly journal for 20 years, wrote 50 novels, 5 novellas, hundreds of short stories and non-fiction articles, lectured and performed extensively, was an indefatigable letter writer, and campaigned vigorously for children's rights, education, and other social reforms. Dickens' literary success began with the 1836 serial publication of the Pickwick Papers. Charles Dickens died on June 9, 1870 of a stroke. He is buried in Poets' Corner in Westminster Abbey. Summary of Oliver Twist's novel. Oliver Twist is the story of a young orphan, Oliver, and his attempt to stay good in a society that refuses to help. Oliver is born in a workhouse to a mother not known to anyone in the town. Oliver lost. Oliver walks towards London. The doctor tells Oliver he can come with him to a place where a gentleman will give him a place to sleep and food for not rent. Oliver follows, and the doctor takes him into the apartment in London where he meets Fagin, the aforementioned gentleman, and Oliver is offered a place to stay. Oliver eventually learns that Fagin's boys are all pickpockets and thieves, but not until he is wrongfully accused of their crime of stealing an old gentleman's handkerchief. He is arrested, but the bookseller comes just in time to the court and says the show that Oliver did not do it. Oliver is very happy with Miss Brownlow, but Fagin and his co-conspirators are not happy to have lost Oliver, who may give away that hiding place. Brownlow enters Oliver to return some book to the bookseller from him. Nancy spots Oliver and kidnaps him, taking him back to Fagin. Oliver is forced to go on a housebreaking excursion with the intimidating Bill Sikes, and at gunpoint Oliver enters the house, will the plan to wake those within, but before he can, he is shot by one of the servants. Sikes and his partner escape, leaving Oliver in a ditch. The next morning, Oliver makes it back to the house, where the kind owner misses. She does so, telling Rose that Monks is Oliver's half-brother, who has been trying to destroy Oliver so that he can keep his soul in her treatise, but that she will not betray Fagin or Sikes. Brownlow, who tells Oliver other caretakers, and they decide that we must meet Nancy again to find out how to find Monks. They meet her on London Bridge at the pre-arranged time, but Fagin has become suspicious and he has sent his new boy, Noah Claypole, to spy on Nancy. Brownlow how to find Monks, but still refuses to betray Fagin and Sikes or to go with them. Noah reports everything to Fagin, who tells Sikes, knowing full well that Sikes will kill Nancy. Brownlow has in the meantime found Monks. The finally admits everything that has done, and the true cast Oliver Birds, Oliver, Mr. Brownlow, and the Meldies, and up living is Peace small village in the English countryside. Characters and characteristics in Oliver Twist's novel. Oliver Twist, a good young man, always struggles to achieve the freedom he dreams of and never gives up to achieve that freedom. Mr. Sowerberry, kind-hearted parents who are willing to accept Oliver Twist when he is out and want to take care of with him a sincere heart. Mrs. Sowerberry, wife of Mr. Sowerberry, who has a cruel nature and treats people inappropriately and likes to exaggerate small things. Noah Claypole, a child who likes to make noise with Oliver Twist and makes Oliver Twist unbearable because of this child's behavior, like slander and prank the people around him. Arthur Dogner, the person who Oliver Twist first met when he was in London and invited Oliver Twist to meet with Fagin and then teach people to the evil. Fagin, the boss of bad boys in London, whose job is to get the kids to steal things to fulfill their needs in a bad way. Nancy, maid of Mr. Tins Brownlow, is a keen person, takes very good care of Oliver Twist, and is loyal to his employer, Mr. Brownlow. Bill Sykes, Fagin's friend, who makes Oliver Twist is always in misery and has a vile nature and doesn't want to forgive people. The third or final point is drama. I will convey a summary of the drama entitled The Story Wrong Number, which is searched from YouTube. Then I will answer some questions related to the drama. Sorry, Wrong Numbers tells the story of Mrs. Albert Stevenson, an invalid woman confined to her bed who becomes increasingly frantic as the story progresses. The drama begins with Mrs. Stevenson attempting to call her husband, who is working late. Frustrated with the busy signal, she seeks the help of the operator, who connects her through to that she assumes is her husband's office phone. Instead of hearing his familiar voice, she listens in on a conversation where two men are plotting a murder. The victim is a woman, home alone, who lives near a bridge. The men plan for the attack to take place just as the train crosses the bridge. To the sound will match any screams from the victim. Horrified by what she hears, Mr. Stevenson calls the operator to demand that she trace the source of this call. The operator explains that only the police can pass through a request like that, and so began 20 minutes of calls to the police, telephone operators, and even to the phone company chief operator as Mrs. Stevenson attempts to alert someone to the gravity of the situation. None of the people she talks to will acknowledge that she is in any danger. Meanwhile, the audience learn that Mrs. Stevenson has been confined to her bed for 12 years in anxiety issues. No one on the phone has the answer. She's shaking and her anxiety mounts, building suspenses that Her health may be at risk. The drama culminates in a scene where Mrs. Stevenson becomes certain that she is the target of the murder. After all, she lives near a train that crosses a bridge, and when she hears that her husband, she left town on business. She knows that she will be at home alone at the designated time for the attack. In the final minutes, she hears an intruder listening on the downstairs phone, and then she picks out footsteps coming up the stairs. She hastily calls the police for help, and just before they answer the phone, her terrified scream let the audience know that she has been caught by the killer. The drama ends when the police ask about the nature of the caller's emergency. The killer picks up the phone, explains that he is fine, and says that he never means to dial the police. The apologizes for the dialing a wrong number and hangs up. And the last one, I will answer the question. Number 1. Where does Mr. Stevenson suddenly go away to on a business trip? Mr. Stevenson suddenly go to Boston for a business trip. Number 2. What does Mrs. Stevenson overhear on the phone when trying to contact her husband? Mrs. Stevenson overhears a conversation in which two men plot a murder. The victim was a woman, alone at home, who lived near the bridge, and it was himself who would be the victim, so it frightened him. Number 3. In what city does the play take place? In New York City. Number 4. What is the primary motivation from Mrs. Stevenson's killer? He neurotic and invalid state. Okay, so that's all I can say. Thank you for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.